You know that feeling at a race? The engines, the flag drops, someone crosses the line first. It's pure excitement. But what if we told you there's this whole hidden story buried in the race results? Something that tells you way more than just who won.
Hmm.
Today, we're not just glancing at the final standings. We're going deep, microscopic even.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission here is to really unpack the dynamics of a recent race from the Australian XGN Assetto Corsa Racing League. It was race 1 at Magnificent Park. You've given us this incredible data set, and honestly, it's packed with insights. Driver performance, strategy, those tiny moments that swing a whole race.
Yeah, it's amazing what the numbers can show you when you look closely.
We'll go beyond just the finishing order, look at who really dominated, who was scrapping hard for position, and who found themselves maybe a bit alone out there, all through these detailed metrics. So let's dive right in. Top of the timesheets, Joe. Start in P1, finish P1. Looking at the raw data, what really jumps out about his performance?
Well, what's fascinating with Joe, I think, is just how quickly he asserted control. I mean, yes, he started on pole, which always helps, but it's more about how he managed the race from there. He didn't lead every single lap, actually. He led 9 out of the 12.
Okay, 9 out of 12. That's still a huge chunk of the race, right?
Oh, absolutely. Significant control.
And his best lap time? 1 minute, 13.458 seconds. He set that on lap 12, the very last lap.
Exactly.
What does that tell you? Leading most of it and still finding your fastest time right at the end.
It tells you he had something left in the tank, you know. He wasn't just scraping by. He was managing everything. Pace, tires, focus, all the way through. And look at his consistency score. It was a 0.37.
0.37.
Okay.
And lower is better for consistency, right?
That's right. So 0.37 is remarkable consistent, like hitting the same mark lap after lap after lap, and crucially, 0 contacts. Perfectly clean race. It shows real mastery, not just speed.
So putting it all together.
It was, well, a masterclass, really. Controlled aggression, super steady performance. He just built that gap to Chris Ruffalo, the car, in second. Over 7 seconds by the end.
Wow. Just textbook stuff from Joe then.
Pretty much. Minimum risk, maximum result. That's often what you see from the real top contenders.
Okay, so while Joe was having a relatively smooth run out front, the real nail-biting action seems to have been the fight for second and third. Between Chris Ruffalo and Big Red 7, Big Red 7 actually started really strong, didn't they? Looked like they might challenge Joe early on.
Absolutely. Big Red 7 had a fantastic start. They actually snatched the lead, held it for the first 3 laps.
3 laps in the lead, okay.
Yeah, they were right there keeping Joe honest, putting the pressure on. Looked like a real fight for the win might be brewing. But like often happens in racing, there was a key moment, a turning point. Came on lap 4.
What, 4? Right, I see it here. Big Red 7 made contact with Chris Ruffalo. Now, that feels significant, especially when you're battling for the podium that closely. How much did that one incident shake things up for them?
Oh, dramatically. It completely changed the narrative for both of them. It really asks that question, you know, how do you bounce back when something goes wrong? From lap 4 onwards, Chris Ruffalo, who actually gained a place overall in the race, he got into second and just stayed there, held it right to the end.
Okay, so Chris recovered well. What about Big Red 7?
Big Red 7 dropped to third after that contact, and well, that's where they finished. If you look at the data after lap 4, Big Red 7's consistency was 1.02, and they had that one contact, obviously. Chris Ruffalo, though, also had one contact, presumably the same incident, but his consistency was much better, 0.51.
Interesting. So despite both being involved, Chris managed to maintain pace better afterwards.
Exactly. It seems Chris was just able to shake it off quicker, reset, find that rhythm again. That's huge under pressure. He didn't just hold position. He actually pulled away from Big Red 7, finished 4.5 seconds ahead.
So it really shows how recovery, that mental reset after an incident, could be just as vital as raw speed.
Precisely. One moment can shift everything, and how you react is critical.
All right, let's look a bit further down. We've got drivers like Wally and Rawls. They held their positions pretty steady. Wally 4th, Rawls 5th. But Wally's data, that tells quite a story on its own, doesn't it? Even without being at the very front.
Oh, Wally's performance is genuinely remarkable. His consistency score, get this, 0.19.
0.19. That's incredibly low. Way better even than Joe's.
It's astonishingly precise. It means 68% of his laps were within less than 0.2 of a second of his average lap time. Think about that. It's like elite level control. Even if he wasn't the fastest outright, that level of precision is something else.
So it highlights that it's not just about pure speed, but that unwavering control is key too.
Definitely. It's that quiet strength. For analysts looking at data, that kind of consistency screams potential. Maybe just needs a tiny bit more raw pace to be right at the sharp end.
And while he wasn't just consistent, the data also tagged him as the hunter of the race. What does that tell us about his race? Was he just stuck behind someone?
It means he was actively chasing, yeah. Hunter means he spent the most time really close behind another car. The average gap was just 1.31 seconds.
Wow, 1.3 seconds average gap.
Yeah, so he was constantly applying pressure, likely to Big Red 7, just ahead of him, always there, filling the mirrors, waiting for maybe a mistake or an opportunity.
Okay, that makes sense. Explains why he was so close to Big Red 7 at the finish. But then Big Red 7, they had the opposite experience, didn't they? Tagged as hunted and busiest. Sounds stressful.
You got it. Big Red 7 was the hunted driver, spent the most time with someone right on their tail. That average gap behind, just 0.82 seconds.
Less than a second. That's intense pressure.
Incredibly intense, especially lap after lap, and being the busiest driver too. That means they spent the most time sandwiched, basically. Close to cars both in front and behind. Average total gap, front and back combined, was only 3.22 seconds.
Right, so constantly in traffic, constantly defending or attacking.
Exactly. And when you combine that constant pressure cooker environment with that earlier contact incident on lap 4,
You can see why maybe they struggled to keep that early pace up.
it paints a pretty clear picture, doesn't it? Just nonstop action for Big Red 7.
And Rawls, just briefly on him in 5th.
Rawls had a solid race. Steady 5th, good consistency too. 0.31. Suggests a strong drive, just maybe less eventful, less caught up in those tight battles, focused on his own pace.
Okay, let's move down the order a bit more. We see Colhide, Old Jock, Sir Naps-a-Lot, and Fuzzy YY. Their numbers tell their own stories too, right?
Absolutely. Every driver has a narrative in the data.
Looks like Old Jock and Fuzzy YY got tangled up very early on. Lap 1 contact.
Yes, that's right. Old Jock made contact with Fuzzy YY right at the start, lap 1. What's interesting, though, is Old Jock started 8th, had that immediate contact, but still managed to climb 1 spot to finish 7th.
So showed some decent recovery there.
Yeah, a bit of resilience. His consistency 1.08, it's not stellar, but suggests he's settled into some kind of rhythm after the incident.
But then we get to Fuzzy YY. Their results really stand out.
Yeah.
That consistency score, 9.20.
Right.
Way higher than anyone else.
Yeah, that's a big number.
And tagged as the loneliest driver. So, what's the story here? A high score means less consistent, right?
Exactly. That 9.20 consistency score, remember, higher means more variation, more erratic lap times. So it suggests Fuzzy YY was really struggling to find a consistent pace. And then being the loneliest driver, that means they spent the most time really far from any other car. The average smallest gap was nearly 23 seconds.
23 seconds. So basically racing in no man's land.
Pretty much. Combine that isolation with the inconsistent lap times and finishing 2 laps down, it really paints a picture of a driver who had, well, a very tough race, likely stemming from that early lap 1 contact.
It really shows how an early incident can just completely derail your race and leave you struggling to even stay connected to the pack.
Absolutely. It highlights the impact, the struggle, and maybe even just the perseverance needed to finish in that kind of situation. A race against the track itself, almost.
So looking back, we've really peeled back the layers today, haven't we? Gone way past just the finishing order. We saw Joe's incredible, almost clinical consistency out front.
Mm-hmm.
That really intense, pivotal battle for second between Chris Ruffalo and Big Red 7, decided by that contact and recovery.
Yeah.
Wally's amazing precision, quiet but deadly as the hunter.
Yeah, that .19 was something else.
Big Red 7's race, just constantly under pressure, the hunted and busiest.
Mm-hmm.
And then Fuzzy Y's really challenging, loneliest journey at the back after that early trouble.
You know, you gave us this data, and when you break it down with these specific metrics, the consistency, the contacts, the gaps, these hunter or loneliest tags, you just get such a richer understanding. It really turns what looks like a simple list of results into this, like, vivid story. Skill, strategy, how people handle pressure, how one tiny moment can ripple through the whole field.
It really does. It makes you appreciate
you.